Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the EmeraldPlanet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, service, and the products that are going to be used throughout the 21st century. And also we're looking for the leadership, the opinion makers, the decision makers that are going to determine how we're going to be able to take care of a planet with 9 billion souls by 2050. And so we have a gentleman at work. Actually, we have two gentlemen. I got one sitting right beside me, one coming in by Skype, that have been working on this for a number of years. The gentleman coming in by Skype is Henry R., sometimes goes by Bob Hidell. He is the Managing Director for Consulting and Chairman of Hidell International. Also, I'm going to add to that a Lifetime Achievement Award with the Berkeley Springs International Water Tasting. And we have special guests sitting right beside me. This is Dr. Joseph N. Pelton, the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. And he's really a regular visitor on the EmeraldPlanet TV. So, Joe, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Henry, you're here, I believe.
I am here.
And in your executive library there in Massachusetts, and welcome. Tell us a little bit about Hidell organization. Also, what is the Berkeley Springs International Water Tasting? So we'll cover both of those to begin, and then we'll start on the topic.
Well, Hidell International is a 50-year-old, nearly, global consultancy that has specialized in environmental areas, but largely focused on the science of water and the technology associated with using water, cleaning it up, and using water as a method to deliver nutrition. And so we've covered those three areas for a very long time now. The Berkeley Springs International Water Tasting Festival is a 25-year-old event that takes place in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, which is often considered the first spa in America. It is rumored, and they have a bath there called George Washington's Bath, in which he is reported to have soaked in the warm mineral waters found in Berkeley Springs. And some 25 years ago now, the town decided to hold a festival for the global tasting of water, so that anybody in the world can submit their water for tasting, and hopefully they'll be the winner. And Arthur von Wiesenberger has been the water master. He's a recognized expert on water tasting, and it's been quite a good festival. But in recent years, it has changed to draw in greater audiences so that water becomes a more common topic among students and the general public. And so in the past few years, it has broadened out its contacts. This show, for example, your program was taped there not long ago, and it's an effort to educate the general public and the world on the importance of water and the changes taking place.
And congratulations on all the work that you've been doing over the 25 years. The planet's going to about 9 billion souls by 2050. It seems that's consensus among the experts. But also at the same time, the last 50 years there's been a tremendous migration of people as well as general population growth. So what are the implications for water and impact on the Earth? One, from these new people that are coming onto the planet, as well as internally displaced people and other types of migrations.
I think there are two trends that are taking place besides just general population growth. The first is that there is a migration to urban areas taking place of the existing population. And more specifically, most of those urban areas are on the literal edges of continents. So they're at the interface between the sea and the land. And humans seem to be drawn from the center of their continents to these literal geographies. Because of the massive potential concentration of population, those urbanized regions have to begin to draw more deeply into the hinterlands behind the cities, the urban centers, and the massive megalopolitan structures to draw resources to provide for the people living there. This is a trend that's going to continue, and it's going to extend the tentacles of survival deeper and deeper into the hinterlands around those megalopolitan literal areas. China's beginning to see that now. As you know, they have a program for shifting water from the south of China to the north of China. The north of China is dry, becoming more dry, but agricultural activities are taking place there, while the concentration of population is happening more greatly in the south, and they have to get the water that's in the south to the north. I think this is going to be a very, very difficult task and a very expensive task. So these transitions are having dramatic effects, not only in the literal areas, but as those tentacles of survival dig deeper into the continents in which these massive urban structures exist, it's going to take more and more of those resources.
Henry, I have Dr. Pelton sitting right beside me, and he's done a lot of research on the megacities and other topics that you're talking about, so he's going to ask the third question. Joe?
Uh-oh.
Well, the thing is, we are seeing this, not only all of the people who are being born, but new people coming into the cities, and perhaps getting 70 to 80% in these cities in this time frame of 2050. And the question is, what can the officials do about it? What can public officials do to cope with this mass migration?
Well, you know, Joe, the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation can play a very significant role in addressing some of what needs to be done, given that their focus over the years has been using advanced technology, even perhaps satellite technology to map the migrations and the resources of the earth. I would say that our policy, the first thing our policymakers need is information. So welcome to the Clarke Foundation. But more importantly, they need to know how to interpret what that information means. 50 years is not a long time. I'm significantly over 50, nearly significantly well over 70. And I plan to live a very long time. So I expect to see some of these issues of migration. But I think the policymakers first need a foundation of information about the Earth. I studied under two folks that were pretty interesting. John Gottman, who's the author of Megalopolis, and Buckminster Fuller, who was at Southern Illinois University when I was there doing world inventory of resources. And here he took the geodesic globe he created through the triangles, and he had graduate students begin to fill in what was in each of those triangles as a resource. And that was in 1962 or 3. And I think today we need to take the technology that you're so very familiar with and remap that inventory so that as our policymakers begin to understand this transboundary need for resources to support this increasing population. So the first thing they need, and the most important thing they need today, is what I would refer to as contemporary information on the availability of resources, and then to identify which resources are under stress, which resources are able to support the populations in their region at the moment, and of course, which resources are being destroyed.
Now, what kind of model do you see for that, Henry, as far as this shift, as far as the impact on nature, but also these population trends between now and 2050?
Wow. Don't limit it to 2050, because I mean, I probably won't be here in 2050, but I'm going to try. We have a couple of things that are going on here. In terms of the...
We got about 1 minute to answer this question, Henry, so we need to...
I'm sorry?
You got about 1 minute to answer the question. We got one last question to go out with.
We need to take a very clear look at what boundaries can be migrated. The first boundaries that are migrated are the economic boundaries, where we create these global entities that go well beyond national boundaries. The next boundaries we have to bridge are the boundaries of nationality, if you will, to find these resources to support these populations that are emerging. And so the patterns are going to change relative to the availability of what boundaries are fluid and what boundaries aren't. And they're going to move sort of like a snake across the landscape. And as climate changes, which it is, as a geologist I can tell you, this is not something new. As climate changes, we're going to see the migration, I estimate, of about 2 billion people in the next 100 years. And a lot of that has started now. Europe's feeling it. I don't know whether that gets exactly to your question.
Yeah, it certainly does, and we're just about run out of time, Henry. So the last question is, what do you see for the growth of Hidell International, say, over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And you have about 15 seconds to do that in.
Well, we have taken a principal role in using water to deliver good nutrition. And so I think one of our key roles, which we're fulfilling now, is to bring nutritional wellness to populations living in stressed resource bases, whether it's water or soil depletion. That's what our role will be.
Fantastic. Now, this is Henry R. Bob Hidell III, who is the Managing Director and Chairman, Hidell International. Dr. Joseph Pelton sitting beside me. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has a drug problem now. Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. and the United States, and we're looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, the products, and also the people and the processes that are making a difference as we move towards 2050 and through the 21st century. And as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050, how we're going to be able to provide all the basic infrastructure, the food, the fuel, the fiber, as well as the water, which is the very essence of life. We have a gentleman who has been working on this and thinking and researching for a long time. This is Henry R. Bob Hidell, who is the third Managing Director in Consulting and also the Chairman of Hidell International, and also the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Berkeley Springs International Water Tasting. And sitting right beside me is our special guest to Skype back up is Dr. Joseph M. Pelton, the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. So Henry and Joe, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV. Glad to have you here. Henry, you're coming in by Skype, and I believe you're here.
I am here.
There you go, your booming voice. Thank you very much for being here. Well, you really have been a long-time student, researcher, and developer as far as what's going on around the planet, really looking at all resource bases, but specifically the water resource base. And so we're looking at some areas of the world that has massive floods, other areas are dry and becoming drier over these last number of years. So how is your company, Hidell International, how have you actually gone about bringing change and also looking at the issues that we faced to help these new people who are going to be joining the planet?
Well, some of our activities have involved hydrogeological investigations, which becomes very, very important as we try to identify stressed water resources. These studies become part of the inventory I've often referred to in the past that is necessary for our policymakers to understand what aquifers, what surface waters have come under stress. And as you know, particularly parts of Asia, the water resources have been very heavily impacted by biological and chemical contaminants due to the fact that those rivers are also carrying the waste streams, not only the drinking water source, but the waste streams of the industry and agricultural activity. And so a lot of our research has been involved in identifying what these biological and chemical components are and some of the technologies available to address them.
So how does proper water management play into all this, and what do we need to be looking at as the policy makers, decision makers, for all these disparate countries, roughly 214 countries and territories around the globe? And what are some of the immediate needs that these nation states and territories actually have as we add more and more people to the planet?
I think the initial steps have to deal with the now issues. And many water sources are under assault now by the chemical and biological components, agents that I talked about a second ago. I think we need to first take a look at where our populations are settled and how we are treating the waste going into these rivers and lakes that act as sewers for us. So from that standpoint, there's a number of technologies available to first treat the waste so that we can begin to clean up the sources of our drinking water. Keep in mind that only, in general, less than 1% of all treated municipal water, and this is particularly true in North America and Europe, is used for direct human consumption. So in most cases, the bricks and mortar operations that treat the waste and also treat the incoming water for distribution as drinking, treat them at a very high standard that may not necessarily be the answer to most cases, since this is a high cost component of urbanization. And from my perspective, I think one of the things we need to do is look at simpler divisions of drinking water versus industrial water versus agricultural water. 80% of the water resources of the globe go to growing crops. And although some of that is returned to the earth, it's often returned with a large number of agricultural compounds. India, for example, has 1.2 billion people living in an area the size of the US east of the Mississippi. The soils are exhausted, and so many chemicals are applied to that, which go into the aquifers. Now as we draw drinking water out of those aquifers, we have to treat that water to get rid of those compounds. And of course, when you have that kind of crowding, human waste becomes a significant issue as well. So you have to balance, and our policymakers and our visionaries and our technicians have to balance this need between cleaning up what we have today in an effort to prepare for the future, and also identifying those technologies as our membrane separation technologies become more refined that can do the job of providing drinking water, maybe in a different manner than we are today. We're used to these large urban processes, and I think the cost of those are going to make it impossible for many of the urban populations to benefit from the technology we've benefited from in the last 100 years.
Thank you, Henry. And Joe, you have the next question.
Well, yes, as we add about 2 billion people in the next 35 years to 2050, and as we also lose the icebergs melt and we have less potable water, it seems like we really have to do something different. And what you've talked about is a start, but what else can we do?
Well, we do have this miracle machine at Hidell at our company that performs miracles, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to perform that miracle. I think that we need to immediately dive into these emerging urban areas with the new technology. 2 billion people is a huge number of people. And of course, in many geographies, people are living longer. So this compounded number becomes a significant number as life moves on. And one of the things that I've observed, I've spent almost the last decade working in India, is that aspirations of the young people coming along aren't to live a life less than this generation of population has. And so there's a very high aspirational component. So education at a very young age about resources and the employment of resources. That includes not only water, but timber, grasslands, agriculture, housing. We're going to have to educate a younger population that the excesses that we have seen and we're seeing today cannot be supported by the resource base that exists in the world today. And we need to start, Joe, we need to start that process in schools today, because our aspirational leadership has been quite excessive.
Yeah, and also too, Henry, looking at many of the developing countries on the African continent, Southeast Asia and Latin America, many of those populations are almost 50% youth under 25 or 30 years of age, and they certainly have a different level of aspirations than their elders. looking at what do you suggest as a reading list or some resources that our viewers may be able to go to follow up on our discussions that we're having right now?
Well, this pile of books beside me is there for a reason, mostly to remind me. In the most recent publication of the American Water Works Journal is an article by Roger Patrick, and it's called "When the Well Runs Dry, the Slow Train Wreck of Global Water Scarcity." It is absolutely one of the best summaries, and I mean the summary of the current global condition. It would be terrific if this particular article would be distributed to not only our policymakers. The AWWA Journal is a very respected magazine on municipal and water supplies. And this was an excellent article. I recommend that. I recommend reading The Cadillac Desert, which is about the U.S. reclamation program in the 30s, starting in the 30s, trying to reclaim water in the West. That tells you, that goes through all the policy making and policy decisions that took place during that time in the belief that they envisioned a future in the West, whether it's Phoenix or Los Angeles. We now know the condition of California. And then for those who are interested in technology, providing safe drinking water in small systems is a publication that came out in about 1999 as a result of a NSF, World Health Organization symposium that took place in Washington, D.C. Very interesting book. In preparation for our talks here, Sam, I reviewed parts of it, and many of the recommendations and technologies that are recommended in 1999 are still very, very valid today. And then if you go online...
Henry, we're just about out of time. Where do you see that your organization being in the next 5 years? And please be quick.
I'll be quick. Right where we are, doing what we do, providing good health and wellness and water to as many people as we can.
Thank you very much. Henry R. Hidell III, Managing Director Consulting and Chairman Hidell International. Dr. Joseph Pelton sitting right beside me. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to decide where the water resources are and how to build the Emerald Planet.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self. And now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs or to make a tax-free donation, contact cfrip@aol.com.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems, and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices. And we're looking for how we're going to be able to take care of a planet that's going from 7 to 9 billion people throughout this time by 2050. And so we have to provide them not only just the meager existence on the planet, but how we're going to actually provide them with increased resources at the same time that we're stressing the resource base that we have on this planet. And so we have a gentleman sitting right beside me. It's published, I think, almost 40 books now, I think. This is Dr. Joseph N. Pelton. He's the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation, been on Emerald Planet before. And Joe, welcome back.
Glad to be back.
Tell us about the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. What is it, and a little bit of the origin of that?
Okay. Well, it was founded in 1983, part of World Communications Year. We actually had a committee appointed by President Reagan that I worked with, and we decided to set up this foundation in honor of Arthur C. Clarke, to support education and also to keep his memory alive of all of his amazing thoughts and writings. And since then we've blossomed, we've spun off this new center on the Arthur C. Clarke Center for the Human Imagination, the University of California, San Diego. We have the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Space Education that helps students put together projects to fly on the space station. And most recently, we've started producing videos on issues of how to use space to cope with some of these problems.
Well, looking at what you're doing, I know you're a futurist, and I've heard you speak a number of times, and I've read some of your books, so you're really doing a fantastic work. But what is the connection? Part of the title of this program is Deepest Oceans to Outer Space. What is the connections with, and we'll start with your part of this whole thing, the outer space with the deepest oceans and the Earth in between?
Right. Well, the thing is, Earth is a spaceship. We forget that, but we actually are hurtling around the world at some 60,000 miles an hour, and we have a very thin atmosphere that protects us, and there are also magnetospheres that protects us from the solar storms and the worst things that can go bang in the night that comes to us from outer space. And we really do need to look at the fact that we have just that limited resources to deal with. And space and the tools from space allow us to get a synoptic overview of problems of pollution in the oceans, the ozone hole. We never even knew there was an ozone hole before there were satellites. We didn't really know that there was a magnetosphere until we had satellites. And we really can't cope with any of these problems, whether it's water, whether it's talking about climate change. All of these things rely on the space tools that allow us to see what's happening in a synoptic overview.
And this is one of the space tools we have right behind us. So what's going on in space that's having direct impact as far as the weather patterns that we're facing and also the long-term change of climate change?
Well, the thing is, we have studied the science of the Earth and know that there have been 5 mass extinctions over time. And we are worried that climate change and other things that we now know about could bring about another mass extinction. And we focus so much about climate change, but we also have the ozone hole, which can lead to genetic mutation and can lead to cancer and so on. We also have the much better understanding of how things relate. In other words, the melting of the ice caps that turns the water into salt water, and that doesn't refreeze. And so it doesn't come back into the cycle the same way that things in the past. So basically, we've had 50 years of space science to understand our planet and understand how constrained we are in resources. You know, we did this project out in Arizona called Biosphere 2 to figure out, could we create a perfect biosphere? And turns out we couldn't, that we had to vent gas because the biospherians inside would have died. And basically, we have Earth as a biosphere, and so we need to get much smarter if we're going to survive as a species and not have another mass extinction.
Yeah, looking at this, let's go back up to this space tools. What are these space tools, and how do we know one when we see it?
Well, the thing is, there are lots of different tools. We have radar, synthetic aperture radar, that tells us some sorts of information. We have these sensors that go to ultraviolet and down to infrared, and tells us about plant life and where there's disease, where there's fire. Also, it tells us where there's oil and minerals and fish. And all of these tools give us an amazing overview and understanding of the world that we never had before.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at about these space tools, how does that actually help us to sustain and also protect planet Earth?
Well, as I say, we never understood before some of the things that we had to worry about. Things like the ozone hole. Understanding that the magnetosphere is not stable, and that we have found in the last 20 years that the magnetosphere has gotten 15% weaker. Well,
and what is that?
That basically, the Van Allen belts are shaped by the magnetosphere. If there weren't the magnetic field, we wouldn't have that protective shield that's actually the Van Allen belts. And this is a problem because there are solar storms, there are these violent eruptions. We had one in 1989 that wiped out our electrical power from Chicago to Montreal, called the Montreal event. There was an event back in 1859 that if it happened today, we think it could wipe out our communication satellites, our weather satellites, could actually wipe out the GPS system, which actually synchronizes our internet. And so there was a study by a team of sort of 7 black swan events that we have to worry about, and one of them was a massive solar eruption that could wipe out our communication systems and our power systems and so on. So we know a lot more, but unfortunately knowing a lot more knows that we're a lot more vulnerable to asteroids, to solar events and so on, but also we understand climate change and how we can cope with climate change and the problems with water, which is our biggest concern today, more than actually rising sea levels.
Yeah, and of course the whole thing about water, which is the essence of life, if we don't have potable water for the population, we're all going to cease to exist in a very short period of time. So going back to this notion as far as the Earth as a spaceship, we don't really think about that because we're, in the Earth, we are surrounded by trees, we go to work, we do all these normal things, but yet we are hurtling through space at a very rapid clip. So when we look at it as a spaceship, one is, do you think that most people understand that concept? And secondly is, why do decision makers and researchers need to truly understand that and the implications for the future of Mother Earth?
Well, the truth of the matter is, we live on a 6 sextillion ton mud ball, and that we have problems that come from that. The sun gives us light, gives us power, but also subjects us to these solar storms in an 11-year cycle. We also know that there are now something like 1 million asteroids that are in the 30 to 40 meters range, which is sufficient to wipe out a large city like New York or San Francisco or what have you. And the thing is, Congress has said to NASA, let's do an inventory and let's try to find all the asteroids that are bigger than 140 meters. Well, the trouble is we've found about 10,000 or so of that size asteroids, and that's good. But the point is, the smaller these asteroids get, the more of them there are. And there's about 1 million of them that we have not discovered that are capable of wiping out a megacity. And we're getting more and more of these megacities and more population, so we're more and more vulnerable. So people said, what's changed? What's changed is we have a lot more people and a lot more places that could be hit that were once it was hit Siberia, that was okay, but now it could hit any place on Earth, and there's 1 million of these asteroids. So when we talk about green planet, we need to think of more than just climate change. We need to know all the ways that we're vulnerable on spaceship Earth.
Yeah, looking at this whole thing as far as spaceship Earth and looking at the vulnerability as far as the water, and of course then protecting the soil and the air quality and all these other things, looking at how do people become involved and engaged in this so they feel like they're a part of it. And it's not just the fact that we have all these issues, we are learning more, but in a sense we're doing less because we do have more tools, but we have more understanding what's going on around us. So how do we address that, Joe?
Well, Socrates said there's only one evil, basically ignorance, and only one good, knowledge. So as was being said earlier, education and training of everybody to better understand what is planet Earth and what is the solar system, what are the solar physics and the information about the Van Allen belt, and what were the 5 mass extinctions. And basically the 5 mass extinctions, except for the one asteroid hit that wiped out the dinosaur, they were all due to some sort of climate change, of heat rise. And so it's not just humans we have to worry about, it's about all species on planet Earth. And getting smarter, better educated, getting our public officials better educated of understanding the threat. I grew up with Jimmy Imhoff in Oklahoma, and he denies that any of this is happening. And I keep saying, Jimmy, it's not true.
It is happening. We only have about 15 seconds. Arthur C. Clarke Foundation, what do you see over the next 5, 10, 15 years, Joe?
Well, we are starting to produce a number of videos about things like everything from orbital debris to cosmic hazards from the sun and from asteroids, as well as new ways to use space to understand the problems that we have to address and how to address them better.
That's fantastic. Dr. Joseph N. Pelton is the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation, and thank you for being with us as we're looking at the deepest oceans to outer space, the co-join of those as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of EmeraldPlanet and also the Director and host for EmeraldPlanet TV. We come to you on a weekly basis to bring you the best of the best, those 1,000 best practices that are going on around the globe in at least 144 in other countries. And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me that's talking about climate change, the outer space, the depths of the oceans, and all the matter in between and how all these fit together. Dr. Joseph N. Pelton is a good friend, been on EmeraldPlanet before, the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. And Joe, welcome back to EmeraldPlanet, and thank you for sharing about all this new research and development that the Arthur C. Clarke is doing. Tell us a little bit about how are you actually leveraging the resources of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation to really link this, between what's going on in climate change, the oceans, the earth, and the technologies that are being used to do all that?
Well, first of all, Arthur C. Clarke himself is a real inspiration to us. He wrote as much about the oceans as he did about space, and he spent the last few years of his life addressing the issue of green energy. One of his favorite lines was, OTEC is the answer to OPEC, OTEC being ocean thermal energy conversion. And he actually, in Sri Lanka, had his own business called Underwater Safaris, and he knew that he could never go into outer space, so as close as you could get to going into outer space is the oceans. So this was really his life and his passion. So we are carrying on his interest in not only outer space, but also his interest in the oceans and clean energy. In fact, I have this new book out, which I'll mention, that talks about all of his predictions, and they cover everything from
up so people can see it. There you go.
Everything from space to driverless cars to all sorts of green energy concepts that he thought had such promise. And so he is very, very much our inspiration. And as I say, we are trying to work with many other organizations to leverage our relationship. So we have a strong relationship with the World Future Society, the center out in California, and so on, and our various publications. Increasingly, we're doing videos. We find that doing books are one thing. Actually, doing videos on YouTube reaches a much larger audience. So we're doing these everything from 7-minute videos to 30-minute TV programs to address these issues of the technologies, our concerns about climate change, and the various ways to use space and energy technologies to cope with the problems of a population that's actually, it's not only 9 million in 2050, but perhaps 11 to 12 billion by the end of the century. And by 2100, we may really have more people than we can really sustain, and water is the #1 resource that the space agencies looking at down at the Earth has concluded that's our #1 stress resource.
Yeah, and looking at that, that's something that's absolutely true when you have about 1+% is actually potable water we can actually use. But as Earthlings and also to the decision makers, what do the current population and future generations need to be thinking about, and how do we prepare for this future. And I'm going to bring Henry R. Hidell in to follow right in on your answer and let him add his thoughts on that too.
Well, to me, population growth is a real problem. That we have places like Nigeria that is projected to overtake the population of the United States sometime around maybe 2050 to 2075. Cities like Lagos are growing at 5 to 6% a year, and that's unsustainable in terms of education, in terms of health care, and in terms of water. And probably number one is water in these mega cities that are growing 5 to 6% per year without the infrastructure to support that type of growth. So in other words, if you take all the people who are projected to be born in the next 35 years, we'll find that there's another 2/3 of a billion people on top of that are moving into cities. So it was brought out very clearly by the fact that we have these huge population shifts of billions of people into cities without the infrastructure, without the water, without the educational systems, without the healthcare systems to sustain them. So this is a big part of the whole climate change issue, but we don't understand how big the issues are and how interrelated they are on Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, when looking at, we're going to have projection over 300 of these mega cities, many of them in China, India, and other countries like that. But at the same time, even though we're saying by 2050, 70, 80, depending on what research you're looking at, people live in urban areas. Right now, supposedly 80% of the U.S. population's in urban areas. In Brazil, it's 87%. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to think of these that many people that are in urban areas, particularly a country like Brazil or the United States. We think of large, wide open areas and large agricultural base. But we have Henry R. Bob Hidell, who is the Managing Director Consulting and Chairman of Hidell International. I think he's waiting to come on by Skype. And Bob, we wanted to bring you back in. You know, we had that question that you've just heard. What is your perspective on all this, the balance between this population expansion, water, and then healthcare, education, and other types of resources that we need to actually increase the quality of life for people on planet Earth?
Well, Joe Pelton pretty much summarized the complexity of the relationship. I look at Spaceship Earth slightly differently since being a hydrogeologist and geologist. I look at Spaceship Earth as a piece of cheese in which mold is growing. And as you know, mold will grow anywhere until it runs out of energy. And some energies come from the sun, some energies come from the cheese, but eventually we're going to consume the energy that this Earth has to supply human population. And the brutal reality of that piece of cheese is that the die-off from not having enough energy to support the ever-increasing population is going to become a reality, I wouldn't say in 50 years, but certainly we are beginning to see some of it in the life expectancy of people living in massive slums associated with urban areas, from disease and lack of food, lack of nutrition. We are beginning to see that today. And although that's a brutal assessment, it is a reality of what Joe was just talking about. So, there have to be a number of steps taken at the policy level. China tried it with one child per family kind of concept. That's going to become a reality as our urban populations become more intensely concentrated.
Now, Joe, looking at the technologies being used in space, and of course we're generating more and more space junk at the very time we need to be protecting all these resources and these technologies. So what is space junk, and how is it really affecting in a very negative, profound way what we actually need to be studying and learning and providing the research to decision makers so that we're actually enhancing the quality of life, but yet we're putting more into space, and are we going to be heading towards we're going to be getting less out of it?
Right. Well, I think there's some visuals that maybe they can put up showing this, but the bottom line is that we started out, let's keep going, a few more. Now that's Van Allen belt, but keep going. There we go. That's the buildup, basically starting in the 1980s to where we are today. And the problem is, just as we've started polluting Earth, we've started polluting outer space. And the thing is that if we let this pollution of space junk out there build up, eventually it will be impossible to put up the spacecraft that we need to monitor the Earth for communications, for navigation, and things like GPS, all of the functions that are built into almost everything we do. And so just as we started to develop an environmental policy for Earth and to cope with climate change, we need to have a way to deal with all of this space junk that is building up, that people in the 80s and 90s said, oh, that won't be a problem. But a friend of mine, Don Kessler at NASA, said, yes, it will be a problem. And today it is a problem. And we're going to have to spend billions of dollars to find a way to bring this space junk, particularly in low Earth orbit, we're looking at right there, to bring it back to Earth.
I tell you, it's just amazing. We have all this going on with climate change, and at the same time we're adding more and more junk, into space itself. What do you see, and we're absolutely running out of time, what do you see for the changes as far as how do we address space, how do we address the oceans, and be able to accommodate these 9 billion folks that we're going to have on the planet by 2050?
The interesting thing is there's a one-word answer: sustainability. The United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space have created a group to look at the long-term sustainability of space, and people are also starting to say the key word is sustainability, that we need to figure out a way to not overconsume, whether it's water or whether it's too much stuff, junk in space, and so on. So sustainability is the answer.
Well, I think that's, we're going to have to investigate that, so I guess we'll have to have you back again. This is Dr. Joseph M. Pelton, the founder of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. He's a world-renowned author, publisher, and just doing wonderful things. Thank you for being with us as we look for the best of the best as we create the Emerald Planet.